Happy to be here and reconnect with Cal Poly. As the professor mentioned, I did start school at Cal Poly Pomona, and I'll go into a bit of my background. But just to clarify, I actually did not graduate from Cal Poly Pomona. Unfortunately, I dropped out after maybe a year and a half. Life, as most of you probably know, gets in the way sometimes. And so I ended up dropping out, but eventually made my way back to school and done quite a few other things since then. But with that, let me go ahead and start sharing. I put a few slides together just to sort of help with the conversation. And bear with me while I do that. I believe I'm sharing a PowerPoint slide right now. Can you guys all see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, here's the tricky part. I'm going to try to go to presentation mode, and sometimes all kinds of crazy things happen. Hopefully not. And there we go. You guys still see that? Hopefully.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So digital transformation. I did want to make a couple comments as to why I thought it was interesting to touch on this topic right now. Clearly, here we are all through Zoom using technology that probably a couple years ago, a lot of us were not using on a regular basis. There has definitely been a acceleration of technology in the workplace. And then I think that's going to trickle down to individuals. Sometimes it moves the other way, right? Consumers driving technology adoption, and then they move it to the business world. In terms of Zoom and sort of remote collaboration tools, I think it might be the other way around, where businesses are going to lead, and then we are all going to get very used to these tools, and then we'll probably start using them in our personal lives. That said, though, there are known or sometimes not well-known potholes on the road. And as digital transformation sort of kicks into higher gear, I do think it would continue. And I'll show you a little bit of what we could see so far. It will continue. It would accelerate. It's still early. A lot of businesses are still early in the adoption phase of technology. However, you know, I want to be cautious that, again, there's potholes on the road, and we just want to be alert and watch out for those. So hopefully the presentation will come across as optimistic but cautious around digital transformation. And then obviously at the end, we'll open it up to have some question and answers and see, clarify any position there. So with that said, let me dive into the first slide. I'll talk a little bit about myself, just as a recap. I know the professor just mentioned some of the things, but let me touch on, I'm currently Vice President of Digital Marketing and e-commerce at Viking Cruises. If you haven't heard of that brand, don't worry, I'll go a little bit into what it is. Previously, I have held other, similar titles: vice president, director, senior manager, at mainly marketing roles, but within various industries. Finance, I spent quite a bit of years in finance under Citigroup. Previous to Viking, I hadn't worked in tourism or travel and hospitality industry, so I kind of came into a new industry. I was coming from Brentwood Home, which is a direct-to-consumer packaged goods for the home. I worked at MoviePass for a few months, about 6-7 months before control changed, and then they did a few interesting things, which unfortunately ended MoviePass. I did spend a few years at Hulu. Prior to that, I had a couple of startups that I co-founded, and before that, you can see I spent a good 6 years or so in finance. I did start at Cal Poly, my education, as I mentioned. I went to Gary High School in Pomona, but then I dropped out, was out of school for a few years, eventually working full-time, going to school, went to Santa Monica College, transferred to UCLA. A few years later, went back to school and got a master's degree. My sort of knowledge again, through multiple industries, but what I've been more in touch with is marketing technology. There's a whole host of acronyms in that world, where there is DSPs, CDPs, SSPs. If you don't know what they mean, don't worry. We're not going to go into the details of what they are. Might be for a future conversation. But there are a lot of technology, especially in digital marketing, that you need to be able to run your campaigns and then report on them and analyze them and then optimize them. So technology and digital marketing, I kind of go hand in hand. I've always been close to technology. Lucky enough, in the mid 80s, I had a Commodore 64 computer at home that I mainly played with, but I did a little bit of programming. I see some people recognize the name. So I did dabble with a bit of programming. Then in the 90s, that became the web. Obviously, the web sort of took off mid 90s. So learned HTML and eventually CSS, some PHP to be able to program websites, and then a bit more on the LAMP stack, the Apache and Linux, and what you kind of need to have a website up and running. More recently, though, and more appropriate to sort of what I'm doing now, and what I would recommend, by the way, I'm a big proponent for most that are interested in marketing and analytics, is Python. There is another program, R it's sort of statistical program that's very popular, but I think Python now has definitely probably it's at par, if not ahead of. There's a lot of great libraries within Python that help you do a lot of data analysis. And in marketing, especially digital marketing, as I'll show you in a bit, there's a lot of data to play around with. So knowing how to manipulate and access a lot of data, and even if you're not hands-on doing the data, programming or engineering, at least knowing some of the concepts and how sort of things work and how they talk to each other at a high level will help you as if you're interested in it. And again, there might be very backgrounds and interest in this in the audience, people listening now. But if you are interested in anything that has to do with digital marketing, because most of marketing is becoming digital to a large extent, or just analytics, big props, and definitely recommend that you start learning a little bit about technology, and then Python probably. And lastly, I am an immigrant. I came to the US in '89. So you'll hear an accent, which is English was my second language. So I learned it here when I arrived. I'm a husband, father of 2 teenagers. And I'm passionate about nature and dogs. I've had so many dogs through my life, probably too many. I used to have 3. I lost 1, unfortunately, so now I'm down to 2. But my wife and I keep toying with the idea of getting another one, though we probably shouldn't, because I think 2 is plenty. Anyway, moving on. So the topic at hand, actually, no, before we get into that, just so that you put a bit of more context to who I am. So Viking Cruises, I mentioned I'm currently vice president at Viking Cruises. I've been there for 4 years now. I joined them in '97. Viking Cruises is the world's leading river cruise company. We own or control the lion's share of river cruises. For those that don't know what that really means, it's fairly new, maybe 20 years, 25 years. In fact, Viking Cruises, when it launched in 1997, was one of the earlier proponents for that. Now, you could think of Mississippi, for example, if you think about Huckleberry Finn and, cruising down Mississippi, something like that, but in Europe. So primarily this happens in Europe. There's 2 large rivers. There's multiple, but there's 2 large rivers, the Danube and the Rhine, that cross almost all of Europe. And so a way of travel in Europe is you could fly there, get on a boat, on a particular ship, on a particular city, and kind of just traverse the continent and then make stops along the way. So it's a really great way to experience Europe. We started in 1997, 2015, we launched Oceans, but there was this ship that you see here is an ocean ship. It's not a river ship. It's way too big. I probably should have put a river ship there as well. And so we've expanded into Oceans. We recently announced Expeditions, which is a different type of ship that you need to go to the Antarctic, in Mississippi most recently. We position ourselves as a thinking person cruise. So we focus mostly on the destination and making a very culturally rich experience. This is different than cruising in general. Most people, when they think about cruises, they think about a big ship, has 5,000 passengers on it, and has all kinds of bells and whistles. And really a big appeal of it is to experience the ship, right? So they position and they promote the experience on board as opposed to what sort of you would do, once you're at your destination. We are worldwide. We operate in 3 continents. We have offices in 3 continents. We visit all 7 continents in the world. We have around 10,000 employees. That's counting all the people on board, which is the vast majority of employees, as you can imagine. We primarily target in Anglo-speaking countries, US, Canada, UK, and Australia, though we do have some small efforts in other countries. And it's a fairly premium product. Customers, for the most part, are baby boomers. So the vast majority of you probably never heard of us, and that's on purpose because we don't really promote or target or really build our brand for anyone below, frankly, 55. Our medium customer is 64, 65. It wiggles around that. So don't be surprised if you've not heard of Viking Cruises. There's a reason for that. And they're fairly expensive trips. Again, it's multi-days. The minimum is 7 days. And you have to fly to Europe for the most part. So that's Viking Cruises. Now, topic at hand, digital transformation. So what is? I wanted to start with what is digital transformation. Unfortunately, it's become a bit of a buzzword as a lot of things happen or become. And then once that occurs, it sort of starts to lose its meaning because people use it for multiple things. So according to Wikipedia, which I think we all students have used and probably continue to use, hopefully it's accepted now as a semi-reputable source. Digital transformation is the adoption of digital technology to transfer services or to transform services or businesses, replacing non-digital or manual processes with digital processes, or replacing older digital technology with newer digital technology. I find that statement to be pretty broad. You could almost remove the digital technology piece of it and just call it technology. And it would be like the history of businesses, right? Since the invention of probably the wheel, the businesses have used the technology to do better, be more efficient. So I don't think it really gets to the point. On Google, if you search it, you're gonna get fairly recently, I think I did this 3 days ago, almost 500 million results that are indexed by Google at the moment. So obviously it's a heavy topic. There's a lot of content around it on the web. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the trends. If you use Google Trends, you could tell that really not a lot was happening. I went back to 2010 and not a lot was happening then. 2015 is when things sort of started to pick up in terms of interest, people searching for this. That's what this reflects, by the way. But for those that don't know, Google Trends shows you relative terms. So the scale is 100 with the highest, number relative to everything else. So you can see that the highest is fairly recently now in past February 2020, maybe July or August of last year. In any way, you can see a definitive upward trend on the interest of people searching for digital transformation, and that's likely to continue. So that's why I think we're here. Not really satisfied with any of those descriptions. I searched for a few others. Deloitte Consulting, for example, has a fairly similar statement around digital transformation as Wikipedia. Digital transformation is the use of technology to radically improve the performance or reach of an organization. Again, pretty broad. I don't know that it really touches on anything. Harvard Business Review, digital transformation is about talent, not technology. That's actually pretty interesting, that they're very strongly focused on talent. And I think they're right to some extent. You do need talent, but it's not the only one. So I wanted to put it out there. Strategy, not technology, drives digital transformation. This is from MIT, Sloan. They did a study, and basically that's what they came out with. So strategy, not technology, not talent. So there's another point of view by a fairly reputable, organization. And I think they're right as well. Digital transformation, ultimately, if you go back to the previous description, is the use of technology to sort of advance, grow, improve the reach. Well, that's the strategy of any business, right? If you're in business, you want to continue to grow, you want to increase your reach. So Definitely strategy is a big component of that. And then McKinsey, which is probably the best known consulting firm, their description is pretty lengthy. It has a lot of words. Harness the power is there. Modernize core technologies, fuel digital growth. So now I'm not putting them down per se, but just be aware this is marketing, right? So this is McKinsey marketing their capabilities. They have a practice around digital, and so there's a lot of marketing speak. And again, that's what happens with some of these terms when they become sort of popular or they're buzzwords. And then on the right hand, I found it amusing, and I want to share with you guys that McKinsey, on their actual practice, they have a screenshot here. You can see that the people are, I guess, doing digital transformation and having a blast because they all seem to be very happy. And somehow it involves virtual reality because the center guy, right, is wearing these goggles. And the reality is that virtual reality is far from being adopted, even in gaming, which is probably the first use case. It's out there, but not really widely adopted, even within gaming, which are very early adopters. So for it to be anything that a business should be thinking about, it's sort of like not realistic at this point, at least from my point of view. Yet, because it's the cool thing, it's what gets shown. So anyway, not quite nailing down what digital transformation is just yet. So one thing that I do want to point out is there is usually one critical component to digital transformation. And it's not strategy, because you saw it, that's mentioned in the previous description. And the strategy, I think about as to the why you're doing this, right? Your strategy should tell you, should answer like, why do I care? Why do I want to do this? Why am I going to get out of it as a business? So the strategy question should answer the why you're doing this. It's not people. You saw it. Some people say you need people. So clearly you need someone to do this. That is the who is going to help you do the digital transformation. Well, technology obviously is kind of part of it and is baked into it. So that's covered by most people. And I think of that as the how, right? How are you going to do your digital transformation? So you need to know the why and the who's going to do it and how you're going to do it. But then data, you need to have a data strategy, which to me is almost the with what. It's almost like the fuel to the engine, right? So the technology will be the engine that's going to get you there, but you need to fuel it with something. And for sure, data, it's it. The problem, and why I'm focusing on this so much, is that throughout my career, and I'll highlight a few examples, inevitably that's the last to be thought of when you're thinking about digital transformation. And in fact, I think it should be almost the first one, if not the first one, but be on par with all the other ones. I had a professor at business school, Joe Peterson, great individual, great professor. And I'm paraphrasing here his phrase, but it's sort of, I recall it as being, this, tell me how you spend your mental time, your doing time, and your money, and I will tell you what matters to you most. So the premise there on that statement was, if whether consciously or subconsciously, because sometimes we do things without really thinking about what we're doing, we're just doing them. But if you really take a step back, and he was using it in people terms, right? So for individuals, not necessarily for businesses, but so this phrase was really more applicable for people. And he was saying, if you tell me what you spend your time thinking about, if you tell me what you spend your time doing, and you tell me where you spend your money, with just those three things, I get a pretty good feel for what matters to you, because it is budgeting is when you think about budgets, businesses, or even personal budgets, it's value. It's a value discussion. It's like, what do you value most? What do you want to spend your money on? What do you want to do you think you're gonna get a better return from that investment? So it is a value judgment, it's a value call. And so answers to that would tell you a lot about the person. Now, I've sort of stolen that or borrow, I think borrow sounds better. And I rephrased it to apply to businesses. And then what I'm going to say, is I'm going to just read it. Tell me what data is most organized, most accurate, and most protected. And I would tell you what matters to you most. So that's for businesses. Inevitably, where you go to a business and you ask for whatever industry, give me a report, and the first report that they give you, that would tell you like what they care most about, right? Because you didn't frame it, you didn't say, give me a report about this or about that. Just like, tell me tell me about your business. Tell me that the report that they give you will show you sort of what they care about. And unfortunately, the history of businesses, I think it's, and it sort of makes sense. You first care about your product, right? Because you have to have a product or a service if you're a service company. So what do? You build all kinds of data systems, all kinds of reporting, all kinds of analysis to tell you how is your product performing, right? Because that is your baby. That's what you created a company to do, to provide a product or a service. So clearly everyone from the management top down cares about that product or service. And they build all this infrastructure, all this data, all this analysis to measure that, to see how it's performing. How can we do a better product? How can we deliver a better service? You notice though that in none of that, there's a customer. So largely what gets missed is after the fact, they're like, oh, wait, but I also need to think about how the product is actually being used by a customer, or, or the service. How is the service perceiving this? How is the customer perceiving the service? So now I need to start measuring that. And most companies are sort of, behind the ball. Again, I would argue that it's just natural that businesses start with looking at their product or service first, and then they sort of evolve. So what do you end up with? This is a cartoon that I love to share because it's very applicable. You'll be surprised how common this is across large enterprises. I'm not talking about just the small ones, big ones, where the goal is to have this sort of single view of a customer. That phrase, right? It's like, oh, we know about a customer, we know how to serve him or her because we know how they behave, and therefore we could provide the best service or product. But this is kind of like what you end up with, right? So it's I think pretty comical and applicable. As a real life example of what I'm talking about, this is Hulu. At that time, it was called Hulu Plus. I joined Hulu in 2011. At that time, Hulu Plus was the subscription service. Now all of Hulu is a subscription service. Back then, it was a startup within a startup, if you will, because the real business, Hulu, back then, what we called Hulu Classic, was the ad-supported free business, right? So you didn't have to sign up. In fact, you didn't have to sign up. You didn't have to have an account, right? You could just go to hulu.com and then start watching content, right? So that would be because again, this is very telling for businesses. The goal back then for that business was to people watch content, right? So anything that you put in front of that action was hurting your business because your business, Hulu at that time, was ad supported. So the more content people watched, the more ad inventory you had, the more revenue you would make. And so you didn't want to have any friction from the person getting to Hulu to actually watching content. So there was no account. You could create an account if you wanted to, but it was not required. Hulu Plus launches 2010, late 2010. I joined 2011, and I come in to do engagement and retention. This is what I found, right? So I was brought in to look at retention, churn, reduce churn, right? A subscription business, churn is the killer or the growth engine, right? If you are able to bring in customers and keep them for a little bit longer, it just compounds and it gives you that return that you need to get. So I came into Hulu looking to fix or improve retention. And I wanted to find out, information about our customers. What I found out though, is that the customer account, so when you create an account online, right, with your email address and password, all that information was on a MySQL database. When you were watching content and you were going through different, episodes or different series, all that data that was being generated and tied to a user, that lived in a Hadoop cluster, right? Completely different structure or infrastructure. And then if I wanted to find out what credit card someone was using, how long they've been paying for the service, right? All that payment financial information was in an Oracle database. Now, this is the exact same individual. This is the exact same customer. So the first 6 months, what I spent time doing was pulling requests for data to our data team, which wasn't the marketing data team. It was the company data team. There was only one data team right at that time. And we were low in the priority list of requests. So it took a while to actually get to the data. And, but eventually over very many months, right, we started to build a system that would sort of be able to track this. And so when you had a future question as to who are my best customers, what content are they consuming, what payment method are they using, you could get an answer to that fairly quickly without having to do a whole set of manipulation on data. So now that was a little dated. Now it's 10 years ago. This is a little bit more recent. This is at a undisclosed location. I'd rather not share, but this is as of 2017. So this is a little bit dated as well. And the truth is that even digital marketing, so what I was talking about before on Hulu was a lot of data, right? It was engagement data, consumption data. This is just digital marketing data. So it's a subset of all the data that a customer would have. But even digital data is very complicated because we use multiple partners, right, to launch our campaigns and to traffic our ads and to measure the performance and to analyze it. So on the left-hand side, you have like a 10-foot view of what the system that we built. I hire a data engineer, a great person, Paul Katz, with a great background, and he basically built this for us. And what it was is, you know, this sort of middle layer that he set up, basically a machine just dedicated with a bunch of scripts that he created from scratch, mainly Python, some PHP, to orchestrate all the data transfers. And in digital marketing, you're usually consuming and pushing data. So they're both ingestion and pushing data. So the red lines, for example, mean we were pulling data from the systems. Green lights, green arrows, we were pushing data into those systems. What was behind that is on the right-hand side, you see a bit more of a detailed view. There was multiple scripts that, again, that he coded. Eventually hired another engineers, those two data engineers. They built basically the system that was custom built using what was available. You know, when you talk to Facebook, Facebook has a certain set of APIs, right? So you have to find out what APIs they have and what data they give you access to. Google has multiple, Adobe has multiple. I mean, all these firms right now are opening up some of their systems. Obviously, you have to be a client of theirs to be able to access this data. But with the access, then you could bring in that data. And we were doing that, bringing it into a digital marketing database that we created that didn't exist before. And then built a lot of Tableau dashboards on top of that data to be able to visualize it and be able to tell, you know, what's happening. So why is digital marketing and digital transformation, you know, where does digital marketing data fit in? Digital marketing actually tells you a lot about customers, customer life cycle. You know, through the campaigns that you're running, it'll tell you whether someone knows about you or doesn't know about you. They're familiar with your brand, right? So you can kind of measure brand metrics through digital marketing. So that would tell you about your customers. Purchase cycle, depending on the campaigns that you run, you know, whether they're in market and they're kind of considering or they're not considering, are they considering a competitor? So all that information, all those tidbits, is information that you want to have. And again, back to the top of the presentation or the talk, data is what's going to fuel your digital transformation, and largely it should revolve around customers. And this is a good, really great source of customer data. Digital marketing data also provides you with preferences. So depending on what people are sort of clicking and, you know, engaging with, are they engaging with this product or with that product, right? Are they looking at it through this channel or that channel? Are they interested in this type of thing or that type of thing? So preferences from your customers, that's data that you can collect through digital marketing and fuel your digital transformation. Propensities, right? So whether is someone likely to purchase something, purchase online or not purchase? Are they close to making a purchase? Are they far from being from making the purchase, right? Are they early on or closer to making the purchase? So you could gather some data here as well that would help you answer. I mean, not super accurately, right? A lot of this has some noise built into it. It's just the nature of life data, but it will help inform your strategy and the people and the systems and then your digital transformation ultimately. So there's a lot of reasons why I think digital marketing in particular, it's a big component of any digital transformation, and primarily is because it's a large source of customer data. I wanted to throw in a slide on machine learning, because another buzzword, right? And so digital transformation is the machines, machine learning, AI, artificial intelligence. I thought this is a graphic that I like to share. I used it internally to communicate with other executives because I think it's very well laid out. It's missing one thing that I'll highlight right now, but for the most part, I think it's very accurate. You have all this raw data coming in right on the left-hand side. And again, I pointed at some of the examples, right? So you have campaigns running on Google, campaigns on Facebook, campaigns on Snapchat or Pinterest or whomever. All of that is generating data that needs to go as raw data, right? You need to have a process to clean that data and prepare it and have it organized in a way that either you as a marketer could consume to do reporting, to the analysis, or you could feed into a data scientist type of role that will use that data to build models off of it and then try to find a model that sort of works, right? And that's the second bucket. So that prepared data kind of goes into various modeling processes. You're going to need someone who knows and specializes on that. They'll build a lot of models. It's a never-ending process because you're always trying to fine-tune and get it better. Ultimately, you get into a model that you think you like, and then you will deploy that model, put it into production, and then the applications that you're running will tap into that model, right? So the typical would be next best action, an MBA model, right? So we know this history of this particular customer. What would be the next best offer that we want to offer them? Because we believe that based on what they've done before, this is what they're going to respond to best, right? So how you do that, you would definitely need to have the data lined up and cleaned, prepared, have the right models, and then put in production. Now, the thing that's missing is there should be an arrow from applications back to raw data. I was tempted to add it, but I figured I'd just talk about it because the application, now the production application is actually using those models, needs to be feeding back into the system that gets fed back into the model, and it should be improving the model. So there's this circular notion on machine learning. Now we couldn't talk about digital marketing without talking about a big topic du jour, which is privacy, right? By the way, I'm hoping everyone could see the slides that I'm sharing. If you can't, let me know, because I'm assuming we're all looking at the same thing, but I'm not 100% sure. So here, obviously a cartoon is exaggerating, but, kind of not a lot as to what we're after, right? And by the way, I'm guilty of it. I live and breathe digital marketing, and I'm always after ways of finding more and more accurate ways to recognize our customers and be able to provide them and share, and try to present them with the best possible offer that we can. Obviously, this is taken to the extreme. But there are some cases where that's occurring, and hopefully you guys are, those that are in marketing. I'm not sure how many here are in digital marketing in general, but there's a lot of privacy discussions ongoing. In fact, both Google and Facebook have been are being looked into by the Department of Justice. California itself, as a state in the United States, has the CPPA that launched last year, 2020. And Europe has been, very early in the goal of improving privacy and data. So that is one big component that is changing what we do and what we can do on an ongoing basis. So keep that in mind. Now, where is digital transformation happening, right? Because I think I might have been and seemed a little bit pessimistic or not a big proponent. In fact, I am a big proponent. I think it's happening. It will continue to happen, and it will accelerate. Places where it's clear that it's happening. So real estate, right? We all know about Zillow, or most of us Zillow, Redfin. It's on the news lately, but it's been a thing for a while now. Retail investing, clearly most of you probably have heard, of the Robinhood and troubles that they got into, or they're getting into through GameStop and their accessibility, or providing access to people that might not have the know-how to do what they're doing. But clearly, retail investing it's leading edge in terms of digital transformation. Auto insurance, there's this company called Metro Mile, which sells you auto insurance by the mile. right? So you put in a little adapter into your car and it's tracking your miles, and based on the miles, they bill you. They also track how you drive. So if you're doing very quick stops and starts and not driving carefully, they'll know that and probably adjust their rates to adjust for risk. And then payments, right? So Venmo, Square, and there's a whole host of mobile apps that are in payments. PayPal to a large extent, right, would fit in here. So it is happening. Digital transformation for sure is happening. And again, it's accelerating. In some cases, it's going really well. A lot of cases, it's not. And if you start looking into the research, you'll find out that a lot of executives, a lot of people, companies, brands are finding out that they're not getting quite what they thought they would get out of it coming into it. Now, there's a theme here, which most of these are industries, right? So there's companies, but these are industries that I'm talking about: real estate investing, auto insurance. And that is because the ones that are doing the digital transformation are the new stars, right? The upstarts or startups. And for the most part, not the established incumbents or the existing businesses. Auto insurance, some of the auto insurance companies now, the traditional auto insurance are starting to offer also some sort of pay by the mile, but it's still, for the most part, is the new entrants, right? New companies that are bringing in technology and launching that. I do want to touch on an early successor. As college students, most of you might be very familiar with Domino's Pizza. It was definitely a core pillar of my diet early on. But so Domino's Pizza, you wouldn't think that is a early adopter of the digital transformation, but they surely are. I mean, they're being written about. They introduced online buying your pizza in 2007, right? So that's quite a while ago. They were smart enough to start building their own technology. So they built a system called Pulse, which is like the point of sale, like the machines, the cashier machine sort of, right? Where people enter the orders. They built that from scratch instead of going to a vendor and building it. And then they kind of forced or encouraged their franchisees to adopt it. That helped them because now they have one singular system, right, to kind of build on top of. They launched the tracker for pizza trackers. That was a huge deal. If you go back in 2008, 2009, that was like the new thing that was, I don't know, virtual reality. What is it now? Can't think of the new thing, but it was huge back then. And it's become standard, right? Like now you order something, you kind of want to know where it's at, right? Have they taken the order yet? Are they processing the order? Is it out of the shop? Is it being delivered in transit, right? Like that's sort of things that we kind of take for granted. They were the first ones to put it out there. And now they're reporting that 2/3 of their orders are digital orders. So phones are still obviously a part of what they do, but not the majority. And then there's this quote from, he's the CDO, Chief Digital Officer, I believe, Dennis Maloney. And, he said Domino's began to think of itself as an e-commerce company that sells pizza, right? So they were like an e-commerce. Now they weren't a pizza shop. So that's a very fundamental change, right? If in digital transformation, it's not just we need the technology. Technology is going to do it for us. It's very fundamental. You need to have a strategy behind it. You need to have the right people, and you'll likely succeed. Takeaways. So you definitely have to have a strategy, right? You can. One of the errors that I see over and over again is people think technology is going to be magical, right? Just, oh, we need this tool, have the tool, and now things change. Well, the tool itself doesn't do anything. It's just a tool. You need to have the people, you need to have the why, right? The strategy behind it. However, let me just underscore that data is often left behind or as an afterthought. And it really should be at the very beginning, because multiple times I've encountered where we definitely want to implement some technology, but the bottleneck is access to the right data. And so then you have to go back and start fixing a lot of things that haven't been fixed. They've been ignored for many years, and that just slows down your entire plan. Entire industries are going through digital transformation live as we go through time right now. Again, real estate, personal finance, payments, but all the companies will do too, right? So auto, I guess I'm thinking of GM, who recently announced that by 2035, I think they're going to stop selling internal combustion engine automobiles. And so we're in the thick of it, right? Like we're starting to, as I show that graph, 2015 onwards has been steadily going up, and it will continue to. I'll make the point again, digital marketing is a great source of customer data that will help inform your strategy and your tactics within a digital transformation plan. If you're going to put one in place or you're going to be part of one, make sure that you're thinking about this. And then lastly, machine learning or AI, stay away from AI. As a phrase, I definitely don't use it. The reality is that most of what's out there is machine learning, so I would call it that. And it's making progress for sure, but it's very specialized. So you definitely have to have the data. You have to have the people to be able to fully use it. Now, we as a marketer, we spend a lot of money. Most brands spend a lot of money on Google, right? Google search. They're the epitome of machine learning, right? All the ads or listings that we get when you search are highly customized, unless you're starting from scratch or you're launching a brand new browser that you've never used. If you don't do that, they have some history on you, and so when you search for anything, they're gonna fine tune those search results to you and your history. And so they're using machine learning. That is like their secret sauce. So machine learning has been around, especially in digital marketing, for 2 decades now, right? Google Ads came around 2001, I think 2002. So it's been around, but most companies just don't have the capabilities, the people and the skills to actually take advantage of it and use it appropriately. Let me pause there. I was aiming for 40 minutes. I'm at 38, I think. So maybe a little early, but I'd rather leave some time for questions and answers, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I don't know how to do that. So I'm hoping that some of you know how to.
If you stop sharing it, it's going to disappear, and the file that you are sharing will disappear.
Okay, stop sharing now.
Yes, there you go. So I'm sure the audience have a question. I also have a few questions. So my question is, now there may be some limitations as to how much you can talk about the operations that you have at Viking or other companies that you work for. But I'm curious as to the current stage of the digital marketing, the evolution or the technology, the degree to which they have encompassed digital marketing as their daily routine in the companies that you work for. So, for instance, let's say you engage in email marketing, send out a list of your customers in email. I suppose you probably check to see if they actually click the link that are provided and read the information on your website or purchase the ticket or some of the things, and then you once you get the leads, and you probably add them to your database and engage with them. So what is the extent to which now a lot of things are automated, or by using these machine learning automations, and what is the role of digital marketing professionals in working with these?
Yes. Well, digital marketing has become very specialized. So there's verticals like email marketing, as you mentioned. Now there's people that just sort of focus on email marketing, right? Because it's become it's expanded, it's grown, and now there's so many tools that you need to know and be very capable with to fully take advantage of what's out there. So digital marketing is almost its own thing, right? And then there's paid search, which is also its own thing. And then there's like display advertising or programmatic, or, so there's a whole host of sort of disciplines underneath digital marketing. All of those are powered by technology, right? So there's literally nothing that's not using any one way of technology. There is this big push and pull between the large players in providers of tools. So think about Adobe, think about Salesforce, think about Microsoft, right? Oracle to a large extent. They obviously want to continue to grow their businesses. So they're presenting a one-stop shop of tools. But the reality is that most of them have acquired them over the years, even Google themselves, right? So Google acquired DoubleClick in 2008, 2009. And when we think about Google Display Ads or Google Display Network versus DV360, which is their programmatic, right? They have different backbones because they were built by different companies, and they now live underneath one roof, but they're very different. So we use a lot of technology. They're very specialized now. They're becoming very specialized. Email marketing, for example. They do all use data. So back to that data, right? Ultimately, you need to have that signal that someone opens, so being very familiar with data, being familiar with Excel, frankly. Still, hopefully everyone's using Excel on a regular basis to do data analysis and reporting. But I would also put out there that SQL, even a basic learning of skills of SQL, being able to query using a query language, structured query language or SQL, to pull data out of databases and do some simple joins and filtering or grouping would be helpful, because a lot of places are not going to have the resources or the skills to be able to do that for you. And if you could just jump in there and just say, just give me access, I'll pull the data myself, it will give you a big step above most others. So highly recommending that, even if you're just a marketer, that you'd learn a little bit about SQL as well. The phrase of the year, I think you're muted, Professor.
Sorry. Okay, so I'd like to open up the questions to the audience. If you have a question, please. Now, please note that if you use unmute yourself and start talking, will be recorded. I'm not sure if we are recording right now. So if you are recording, then we are likely to use it recording and post. If you object to it, you can just type in questions to the chat. Then I will read it for our speaker. But if you don't mind, feel free to unmute and show your face, and you can talk.
So I had a question. You had kind of mentioned about how, well, there's obviously a lot. The more and more I learn about like how many different metrics there are to record customers in digital marketing. And you said that you have to be aware of your customers. So, and the tools that they'll be using. So how do you best understand your customers before implementing digital marketing tools? Because not every digital marketing tool will be or provide as useful. And so I was curious if you had like a thought process to that.
Thank you, Patrick. That's a great question. So if you're doing it right, frankly, you should know who your customer is before you even start any marketing, before you even start your business, right? You need to know who your customer is so that you build the right product and the right service. We sometimes fall into the belief that we already know who they are, and so we're marketing to them, and that's the one thing to watch out for. We currently, for example, invest quite a bit in our own first-party research. So we had a head of research, and we have a panel of customers, a panel of potential customers, and every so often, right, through various companies that exist, we do research where we, show them ads, we ask them questions. We want to know about their hobbies. We want to know about, where they spend their time. How do they feel about certain things? And so on a regular basis, you have to invest and basically pay for that information. But then with that information, you could adjust your marketing plans. We're literally going through the process right now. We just went through a round of that research, and based on some of the outputs that we got, we're adjusting our media buying plans to better fit and kind of invest a bit more in certain types of content that we didn't know beforehand was like as popular as it turned out to be based on the research. So, but yeah, you definitely need to know. It's a cycle. Once you start somewhere, right? And then you start figuring out what's working, what's not, and then that will sort of help you fine tune. But every so often, you still need to stay away from that and then do the research.
Thank you.
I've got a question about your time at MoviePass.
Yes. Go ahead.
Were you there before or after or during kind of like the big explosion in popularity, or? Before.
So briefly, I know the founders, both co-founders of MoviePass. I was in touch with them in 2014. I was leading the subscription. I was director of acquisition at Hulu Plus or Hulu for subscriptions, and they had a subscription business. So I knew of them, and we were talking. I left Hulu and I joined them. We were racing a Series B. It was a small team, very, very small team. Unfortunately, that racing didn't come across. So we were looking for a Series B funding, and that didn't close. And this is 2015. So after about 6 or 7 months of that not closing and still looking for funding, we really couldn't do much marketing, obviously, without the budget to do marketing with. And so I left, and I said, if things improve or things change, I'm happy to come back. I mean, they're people I know, they're friends. And then about 3 months after that, or 4 months, maybe a little longer, then they sold a controlling stake, 51% of the company, to another company, and then that's when they offer this insane deal of $9.99 for all you could eat. And obviously took off, right? And the story, so you guys know, is it was meant to be for a weekend. So someone threw it out there and said, hey, how about we do this for one weekend? We'll just get some buzz, get people talking about MoviePass. Someone said, sure, let's do it. They did it. They saw the explosion of interest and they sort of got hooked, which they shouldn't have. But they're like, well, let's keep it going and then we'll figure out how to make it work later. Well, that later never came, so.
Okay, great. I was just kind of curious, how, maybe an insider's point of view. Thanks.
No problem.
Since a lot of audience are actually students, I have a question that will be, that some of them may have as well. Now, when you hire someone for various positions on the broadly categorized digital marketing, what qualifications or skills do you look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's kind of two levels, right? You a senior or like a junior, right? So someone who already knows the tools, and you're looking for a specialist, again, someone who could just jump in and they could do it, right? And even do it better than you were doing it before. So you're hiring the skills and the experience. For someone who's new though, and we have, for example, one team member that is fairly young and she just graduated not too long ago from college, it's analytical skills, hands down. So that's why we actually interview and we use some Excel examples and ask them to do some reporting because that is the language that you use to communicate with, right? So numbers and analysis through mainly Excel. We have other tools for more data, aggregation and whatnot, visualization, but from a reporting perspective, Excel is still it. So analytical skills, they have to be fairly comfortable with, doing manipulating data, doing pivot tables, and doing ratios and that sort of thing. So definitely highly recommend that everyone who's interested. And again, you're a marketer, but you need to understand what's happening with the data that you're getting back. So having that analysis is really important. And then just, people skills. Obviously, we all want to work with people that we like. And so just be a good person.
Okay. For the upper level position, what kind of skills do you expect?
Well, I mean, that's a bit more broad, depending on the particular platform, right? It might vary a little bit. For the most part, I guess in general, I would say it's just having the skill set for that particular tool, having the experience. I hired someone, for example, that had 10 years of doing paid social, primarily Facebook marketing. Great guy. Unfortunately, lost him. He moved across the country. But he had 10 years of working basically in an agency doing Facebook advertising for automobile brands. And because our ticket item is somewhat similar, so you think about a car purchase process, it's a time consuming process, right? It takes a long time. It's not an impulse buy for sure. Very few people just feel like buying it at the moment. They do the research, and then the transaction happens offline. We have a very similar purchase cycle in cruising. It's a long purchase. It takes a while to do the research, right? And so there was a lot of similarities there. So that's why I hired him. I hired someone to do paid search. He was a director, almost VP level at another company, and had been doing, again, paid search for 10 years, right? So he knew the in and outs of the tool even better, way better than I do. And so he was able to bring in and then hire people underneath him to help him run, paid search. So then management skills, and communication skills become important. So it kind of depends on the role and the level that you're going to be hiring for. But yeah, one thing is, throughout, we definitely are biased towards, analytical minds.
Okay, thank you. See, it's 2:04, so we are over about 4 minutes. If everyone is good, then we can conclude here. But if you have a dying question, maybe we can have one more question. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to our visually coming to our campus, and perhaps once the COVID situation is resolved, then perhaps we can have you on campus and have a more in-person conversations and others. But thank you so much for finding your time and talking to us. I hope you have a great success on your current and future role. And I also see that you are very, open to mentoring students and other people who are interested in their career. And you are active on the LinkedIn. So I'm looking forward to interacting with you in the future as well. And we also, at the center, we are looking for professionals on digital marketing and analytics that will serve on for the centers, the executive council that will help us to steer the direction. So if you are also interested in it, I'd love to invite you as well. So there are other things that I'll reach out to you. Thank you so much for today. And also audience, thank you for, again, attending our events, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be with you all. And I know it was very high level. Maybe at a future time, we'll do a more deep dive into any one of those. And then you guys will get a bit more, of the nitty gritty, but there's just, this was a very broad conversation, but happy to be part of it, and best of luck to everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Bye.